My name's Phillipe. I'm a philosopher and I'm interested in what architecture can tell us about our lifestyles. I'll take you to explore the most remarkable habitats on the planet in order to discover their meaning and to share their riches. I'm on the island of Sulawesi, 300 kilometers from Borneo. It's the fourth largest of the 17,000 islands of Indonesia. It's here that live the Toraja, an ethnic group of 450,000 people. Most of them are Christians and have animist beliefs officially known as the Way of the Ancestors. At a time when most ethnic groups are being integrated and disappearing, the Toraja amaze many by their firm attachment to their traditions. These can also be seen in their architecture. The Toraja have developed a dwelling that is unique in the world. Far from being a simple hut, it's the material expression of their cosmogony, a vision of the world entirely built around the role of their gods and their ancestors. These unique dwellings, which are practically identical and found across the region, are called tongkonen, which means the place where you sit. The tongkonen is the heart of Torajan life. It's firstly a house, but strangely, it's also a dwelling place for the dead. In the village of Buntu Pune, I'm meeting Ting Ting. In his family, the job of architect has been passed on from father to son. But Ting Ting is also a toparenge, a chief whose role is to maintain not only over the houses themselves, but also the rituals performed inside them in the form handed down by their founding ancestor.
Hello, Phillipe.
Hello. These are amazing houses. I'm totally awestruck by the roof, which seems to occupy all of the space. But at the same time, it seems to have merely been placed on wooden posts.
When you look at the Torajan houses, they look like ships about to set sail. Our ancestors arrived with these houses, and once they had settled on this land, they added a roof. But originally, they were ships ready to sail.
What do you mean, ready to sail?
We don't live eternally in this world. Likewise, a place is never eternally occupied. So, our houses are prepared for departure, physically, but also spiritually.
The amazing thing about the roof is the curve. Why is it like that?
Torajan houses have a roof curved like the horns of a buffalo to let in sunlight. Torajan must be parallel to the world's axis so that the rays of the sun always rise to the east of the house and set to the west of the house.
I think that's an interesting thing. This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen, all for free. No subscription required.
The structure of the house looks very light. There are just wooden supports, and the roof is made of layers of bamboo.
It looks very simple, but a tongkonen is very difficult to build, if only for the materials. Although the inside is quite small, you need 32 cubic meters of wood and about 20 cubic meters of wood for the roof. So it looks simple, but in fact it's quite complicated.
The entrance is pretty narrow. The contrast between the exterior and interior puzzle me. Whereas the exterior is impressive with its rich ornamentation, the interior is kept extremely bare, as a sign of modesty. How many floors does a tongkonen have?
This particular tongkonen has 3 rooms. This room is shared by the grandmother and the teenagers. In the middle is the kitchen, which is also where the family eats. And to the south, over there, is the parents' and young children's room.
Is there also a symbolic organization of the space inside a tongkonen?
The grandparents and grandchildren are in the front part of the house, in the same room, to signify that grandparents are close to death. That way, the grandchildren understand that and prepare themselves for this death. The parents and the young children are in the room above the buffalo stable. The stable is there to remind parents that they have a great responsibility towards their ancestors, but also to their descendants, the children, and the whole family that shares the tongkonen.
You give great importance to the orientation of the house. Is it the same thing inside?
Tongkonen are loaded with meaning. Everything must be aligned with the axis of the world. For example, according to Torajan philosophy, as long as we are in good health, we sleep with our head to the north.
To the north?
When we die, until the funeral takes place, we are considered as being sick. So our head is pointed to the west. It's only once we're buried that our head is pointed to the south.
To the south. Does that mean that north symbolizes life and south symbolizes death?
Yes, that's right. The north gives life. And as the north gives life, it's only natural that the south brings death.
Ah, here's a bedroom. So here, the bed is pointed to the east, neither north nor south. Why is that?
In fact, it's because the door's over there, but we turn the mattress at night.
Ah, I thought there was something. Shall we put it back like this?
Yes, it should be kept like that.
Otherwise, your head will be facing the wrong way.
We never sleep with the head here. Look at that mattress over there.
Okay, I see. So when I go to sleep, it's like that.
Right.
We've brought order back. Behind the tongkonen, away from prying eyes, I discover much more modern homes where the families of Buntu Pune actually seem to live. So does the tongkonen still represent to them a living architecture, or does it merely have a patrimonial purpose?
The building behind us isn't really a house for the Toraja, it's more of a kitchen. The kitchen used to be inside the tongkonen. But we can't do too many activities in there. We don't eat regular meals there or store our clothes and belongings. That's why we moved the kitchen area out back. But lots of people think it's an actual house because it's the same size.
So the tongkonen still has the central place in your lives?
Yes, of course. The tongkonen is still the center of our lives.
I'm invited to share a meal with Ting Ting's family. It's a chance to gather inside the tongkonen where the important events in life take place. What's striking is, not many people really live inside the tongkonen, and everyone has built new houses behind.
Actually, we haven't completely abandoned the tongkonen, only some parts of it. The parents no longer sleep upstairs, but it's still used. There are people who still sleep there, because if we abandon the tongkonen and nobody sleeps upstairs, it would fall into ruin very quickly. We don't think of the tongkonen as having a purely material purpose. It also has a very important role in society. In fact, the tongkonen is central to our beliefs. It's the center of family bonding and the source of our community's rules.
This house is like a mother. And if you lose your mother, you're an orphan.
If the tongkonen were to disappear from the planet, then our links with our parents and other family members would disappear too. So we must preserve them.
If you closely observe the tongkonen, there's a surprising paradox that emerges. Constructed with heavy materials, these houses with their massive silhouettes do indeed seem ready to sail away. The pillars, framework, and buffalo-horned roof give the building incomparable lightness. I come to understand that the tongkonen is more than a technical and architectural feat. It firstly represents man's relationship with the world, or more exactly, to the universe of the Toraja, built around the presence of their gods and ancestors. To them, the facade is the interface between the gods and the community of mortals, where everything acts as a portal to the beyond. Each color has a meaning. Red symbolizes blood and thus life, white for the bones, yellow for the gods, and black for the darkness. This facade is magnificent, with its buffalo head.
We place a buffalo head on the tongkonen to symbolize the limits of human wisdom. We consider the buffalo to be the example to follow, as it is wiser than we are. But there's always a divine symbol above it.
And how do you choose what decoration to use on the facades?
These symbols represent our ancestors. And the buffalo head represents the very first of our ancestors to build a tongkonen.
The facade is obviously richly decorated, but the ornamentation isn't the same.
Torajan houses are all different. It depends on the social ranking of the families within the Torajan community. This tongkonen was built in the 1870s, and its grandeur, strength, and richness tell you that it belonged to someone of great importance. These paintings mostly represent force.
The facade of a tongkonen is a bit like a book that tells the story of your clan's lineage.
That's right. The layout of the decoration and carvings must correspond to the founder and descendants of the family that owns a tongkonen.
The village has an incredible sense of symmetry. If you cut a tongkonen in two, either lengthwise or widthwise, you would discover exactly the same proportions in both halves. But I'm also struck to see how perfectly aligned the tongkonen are. Here, everything is symbolic and conveys a meaning.
For the Toraja, the house symbolizes the mother. Everything inside it belongs to her. It's as if we were inside the mother's womb. It's a way of reassuring ourselves that the regeneration of life is going smoothly. Respect towards the mother is very important to the Toraja.
And this little building is a grain store.
Yes, it's the rice store. It's much smaller. For the Toraja, it symbolizes the father. If there's a problem, we traditionally gather here to discuss it. So the mother is represented by a much larger tongkonen, but the role of the father, represented by the rice store, though smaller, is equally important because it's used to solve problems outside the house.
You meet under the building that symbolizes the father to discuss and sort out common problems.
If there are questions concerning marriage or divorce, they're settled on the east side of the rice store. But if they involve a crime or a death, discussions take place on the west side of the tongkonen.
Wherever the Toraja live, they build tongkonen, not only for the living, but also for the dead. These houses are where the deceased lie in state while awaiting their final resting place. I visit a neighboring village where a funeral ceremony is being prepared. Nene Mambe, who is in charge of the event, explains the meaning behind the ceremony to me. Everything's a work in progress here.
Yes. People are here for the ceremony of the dead. And this is the house of bodies.
Why is the roof the same as on a tongkonen?
The home of the living and the home of the dead are built in the same way, so they look alike. Living or dead, it's the same shape.
How many people are you expecting to show up?
When it's an important family, thousands come to pay their respects.
Thousands of people for a funeral. It's a big event in Torajan life, and all in the same space.
Yes, that's how Torajan belief is. It's life, it's death.
All these constructions are built to honor one single person. In Torajan culture, the higher a person's social rank, the bigger the debt he amasses during his life. On his death, the whole family must come up with the money to pay off his debts and be able to bury him. The process is long. It can take months, even years, and generally requires the selling and sacrifice of a number of buffaloes to offer the deceased a funeral worthy of his rank. These ceremonies are incredibly expensive, but the living accept having to go into debt themselves for the sake of the dead and organizing their own lives around them. After the ceremony, which lasts for 10 days, the deceased is finally taken to his final resting place. In the cemeteries, the dead are placed in a coffin, which are also in the shape of a tongkonen. But stranger still, the dead are sometimes inserted directly into rocky cavities or caves in the cliff face.
The Toraja have several types of cemeteries. Before we started using natural caves, bodies were placed in wooden tombs, like this one. One for an entire family. It's also a cemetery, as you can see.
There are skulls.
It's the same family. This used to be a cemetery. They used to place the whole family inside the wooden tomb called an erong. These days, as we use one coffin per body, we place the whole family in one cave.
Seeing these coffins and skeletons gives me the creeps, but they don't have the same effect on Ting Ting, for whom their presence is both reassuring and benevolent. As if his far-off ancestors were keeping watch over the living from the beyond. They're stacked up, one on top of the other.
Some at the top, some at the bottom. They're placed one on top of the other according to the order of death. There are more on the sides.
Ah yes, up there.
Here, these ones are the oldest.
Oh yes. Pretty impressive. But you don't know who's who. The coffins are a bit haphazard.
As we are buried by clan, the Toraja know that their grandfather, grandmother, aunts, uncles, children, nephews, cousins, etc. all are here.
This cemetery is amazing, with all these coffins piled up alongside each other directly within the rock. Who's buried here?
This is the cemetery of the Londa clan. It's been used for 40 generations.
And all stacked up like this.
We used to bury our dead in large wooden tombs, used for the entire family. But as large pieces of wood became harder to find, we started using natural caves, like this one.
Are the caves all near the bottom, or are there some even higher up the cliff?
Families are made up of numerous clans, and each clan, like the Londa clan, has its own cemetery. Some are low down, but others are higher up. That way, each clan has its own cave.
So in fact, this cliff is the tongkonen of the dead.
Yes, it's a tongkonen, a tang merabu tongkonen, a smokeless tongkonen, which means that there's no activity here linked to life. So it's not only the living who have a tongkonen, the dead do as well.
The Toraja embody a way of living which is striking by its extreme coherence. Everything has meaning, and things seem to respond to each other, living and dead, human beings and gods. The tongkonen, much more than a simple dwelling, is what holds together these elementary powers to form a world. A world in which the Toraja have found their place, within a much larger universe. My name's Phillipe. I'm a philosopher, and I'm interested in what architecture can tell us about our lifestyles. I'll take you to explore some of the most remarkable habitats on the planet in order to discover their meaning and to share their riches. I'm in the province of Voralberg in Austria. Situated between the Rhine Valley, Lake Constance, and the Alps, this small region of 380,000 inhabitants was characterized until quite recently by a rural landscape comprised of farms and big rustic wooden houses. But in the last 3 decades, Voralberg has accomplished a tremendous feat by managing to reconcile this traditional housing with contemporary architecture and becoming a model for the rest of the world in terms of ecology and sustainable development. This achievement is due primarily to the quality of the buildings and the continued use of wood as the base material. With their pure lines and timber cladding, these new constructions are a contemporary reinterpretation of the region's traditional farm buildings. But Voralberg's success is especially due to the involvement of all of its inhabitants who integrate environmental concerns into their daily life. In the village of Egg, in the middle of the fields, a curious-looking raw concrete building draws my attention, so different it is from the rest of the surrounding architecture. These are the offices of Ingo Metzler, a cheese producer who, in a pioneering initiative, had it built almost 20 years ago. Ingo!
Hello, Phillipe.
Hello.
How are you? It's a pleasure to see you in Voralberg.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. This is a very unusual building. These concrete cubes that fit into each other like that. What is it exactly?
It's our offices and also our production site. Critics of this architecture nicknamed it the farmer's telescope.
Ah. But it does in fact look like a telescope from this angle. How did you choose the architect?
We organized an architectural competition in which 4 firms of architects participated.
You mean you organized an architectural competition yourself?
Yes, it was very special for architects at that time. And 4 renowned firms proposed their designs, and this is the one we chose.
You don't expect to find a raw concrete building in the middle of all these wooden farm buildings.
Well, at first there was a lot of debate about it in the region. Some people thought we were building a church here. Others said, this madman's installing a ski lift. There was a lot of discussion about it. Later, when the facade was covered with wild vine, it was better accepted.
Does each block of this telescopic building have a specific function?
Oh yes. On the lower level are the canteen and the cosmetics production site, and above that are the offices and administration. These blocks are adapted to the slope. The first one has 3 floors, the second one 2, and the third one 1, so it's adapted to the terrain. The building's 40 meters long and the blocks are staggered, so light comes in from both sides. This is where we make our cosmetic products. To make cheese, only 10% of the milk quantity is used. The remaining 90% is called the whey. And this whey is used as a base for making cosmetic creams.
So that means there's zero waste. That's very ecological.
We attach a lot of importance not only to the natural aspect of our products, but also to their sustainability. So we try to use all the raw materials contained in milk.
Ingo's involvement in the design of his office installations and production site is representative of the exceptional attention the inhabitants of Voralberg pay to architectural and landscaping issues.
This is the office.
Wow, the view's fantastic.
Yes, and of course, there's an ecological aspect. The office is facing south, so the sun heats it up.
Yes, and this enables you to make huge energy savings. The entire length is walk-through and gives out onto this spectacular mountain landscape.
Over there, we have the goats and the cows. They provide our milk.
What's interesting about this building is that it reproduces the typology of the old farm buildings of the region, yet its facade has a very contemporary treatment.
That's right. We've used the traditional material, wood. These are also living spaces for the animals, so that's why we've chosen this warm material, the wood from our forests.
As I'm curious to understand why a farmer such as Ingo one day decided to turn to contemporary architecture, I accept his invitation to meet his mother, who lives close by, in the old family home.
This is my parents' house.
Wow, it's beautiful, magnificent. Hello.
This is Phillipe.
Hello, pleased to meet you.
My mother, Lydia.
Hello.
And this is David, my grandson.
Hi, David. Wow. What I love about your facade is this wood cladding, these wooden shingles, and this wonderful weathered look they have from the cold and rain. I imagine it took quite a long time to lay all these pieces.
Yes. In the past, they used to use round-edge shingles, but now they're square. They're machine-made. The round-edge ones are certainly more expensive.
Each shingle is fixed with 2 nails. The protruding part is just 1/3 of the shingle. The other 2/3 are hidden. Well, shall we go inside? After you.
Thank you.
Please, come in.
Thank you. Ah, it's beautiful. An old ceramic stove. Ah, and it also served as a plate warmer.
We sit here comfortably with the children to read a book.
Yes, you can warm your back.
Yes, it relieves back pain.
This stove is magnificent. Is this style of farmhouse typical of the region?
Yes. This house was built in 1839. It's had some small transformations and renovations, but in general, the house is still in its original state.
Is it mainly wooden architecture that predominates here?
At that time, construction with wood was already very widespread. Here, very specific joinery techniques were used to build houses without nails by interlocking joints. It was high-quality craftsmanship, and it still exists today.
So what do you think about the development of contemporary architecture in the region?
My son's already an example of this. For me, that's not very attractive, but with vegetation added to it, it looks better. I prefer wood, however.
Did you want to break with a regional style of architecture that seemed a bit too static to you?
I didn't want a style of architecture that existed already. I wanted something new and innovative, both in the materials and the design. It's through all these things that we wanted to be innovative.
The differences of opinion between mother and son on aesthetic issues are no doubt due to the generation gap. But they also reveal the decisive importance that contemporary architecture has acquired in the economic and cultural development of Voralberg over the past 30 years. It's true that the conventional farm building here is of very high quality, whereas in other rural regions of Europe, one can see that this isn't the case.
Tourism is a very important sector of economic activity here, and that's why we need to promote attractive and interesting buildings. Architecture, in fact, inspires emotions, even in those who don't know anything about it. Architectural forms are first and foremost a subjective experience, and architecture enables us to differentiate ourselves from others.
It's an electric car. Is it yours?
No, it's a car that's part of a car-sharing system.
Ah, okay.
You take out a subscription and you can use the car. The aim is to get around in an environmentally friendly way and contribute to ecology. Here's the bus stop.
There? Wow, it's beautiful. Superb design.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Ingo. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
As I travel through Voralberg, I notice that contemporary architecture is present everywhere, in every village. It integrates perfectly into this mountain landscape by respecting the forms, materials, and proportions of the older buildings. It doesn't only concern farms or houses, but also public buildings, from the police station to the cultural center and the post office. All these wooden buildings are an example of sustainable construction, as ecology is a central preoccupation of the region. In the village of Longenegg, I meet up with its mayor, Kurt Krotenhammer, in order to better understand the commitment of the elected officials in the promotion of this type of architecture.
That's our supermarket.
Really? It looks more like a museum.
Yes. For us, it's important that everything be ecological in some way or another. And this is an ecological construction.
It's a very beautiful building. Did the municipality subsidize its construction?
Yes, we subsidize this building because for the municipality, it's very important that people can do their shopping here. And it creates a social bond. It isn't just a commercial activity.
I see. What's great is that the same architectural treatment has been used for the facades of the supermarket, this cafe, and that building over there, which gives a strong visual coherence to all these buildings.
Yes, we use the same architect for the Stop Cafe and the kindergarten. And 3 years later, we used a different architect for the supermarket. But we told him that we wanted it to have the same visual aspect so that these new buildings would harmonize with the old ones.
You're right to think about the landscape aspect.
Yes. So this is our kindergarten, and just opposite, there is our elementary school. And it's not just our school, but also our gymnasium. This gymnasium is a multi-purpose hall and is used for community theater and dances. So today, it makes much more sense to use a single resource, a single hall, for example, and make it multi-purpose and multifunctional.
That's very interesting because today, more and more buildings are being built, whereas the most logical solution would be to create multi-purpose buildings that combine programs and functions.
We're well aware that we can't reproduce and increase land resources at will. We have to use the land in a sustainable manner. The next generation also wants to have green fields and forests. If we construct buildings everywhere, what will the young people do if all they see are buildings everywhere?
This kindergarten, with its spacious rooms, is what's called a passive building, which means that it's capable of reducing its energy costs by 80% by using solar energy or heat produced by its users. It's magnificent. What strikes me is the general high quality of the buildings here. The supermarket, the farmhouses, the nursery school. So for you, on the scale of your village, what are the major concerns of an environmentally responsible architecture?
The idea here in Langenegg is very simply to produce and create things in a sustainable manner, and this corresponds to the mindset of the local population. The wood in this region is mainly silver fir. It's transformed on-site. We don't use trucks that transport merchandise over hundreds of kilometers, and that's primordial. What's more, this creates jobs and helps revitalize the region's economy.
A little farther down the village, an architect is working on a site for social housing using passive energy. It's Erman Kaufmann. Like most of the architects who work in the Bregenz Valley region, he was born here, and for the past few years has devoted himself to the wood construction that has made Voralberg a global benchmark in terms of eco-responsible architecture. Herman? Hello, Phillipe.
Hello, Philippe.
So construction's in progress.
Yes, it's an apartment building we've just designed to house 6 families here in Langenegg. It's a passive building in a composite construction. The structure of the building is in cement, but the building envelope, the facade and the roof are in wood. But come along with me. I'm going to show you what a real wooden house looks like.
All right.
It's this way.
This attention to the major concerns of sustainable development is the result of a close collaboration between the public authorities, the companies, the architects, and the local population. Herman takes me inside the house that he's recently built for Stefan and his family.
Solar thermal collectors are very common in Voralberg.
We chose to install them in the facade rather than placing them on the roof, because a clean roof is one of the traditional features of Vorarlberg architecture. A roof that isn't polluted by added elements. That's why we decided to install this collector in the facade.
Another special feature of this house are these sliding wooden shutters. Herman based his design on the traditional shutters of the old houses in Bregenz and integrated them here in a modern way.
Ah, yes.
The fact that these sliding shutters are about 1 meter from the windows enables them to act both as a privacy protector and as an anti-heat barrier. This means that in the summer it's nice and cool in the living room as the heat breaks here. Another advantage of this house is this pellet stove. It's fueled by these compressed sawdust pellets. It's the house's only heating source. 15% of the heat goes into the rooms, and the rest goes into a tank in the cellar where it's used to heat the water.
I imagine that this enables you to greatly reduce your energy costs, and in a mountainous region such as this, that's a real concern.
Yes, of course. In a region like this, it's the heating that uses the most energy. So it makes sense to produce this thermal energy thanks to this raw material that comes from industrial residues.
I feel that in Vorarlberg, there's a real relationship of trust between the architect, the inhabitants, and the local authorities.
We, the architects, had no desire to be great artists who build completely outlandish things. We made the choice of proposing qualitative solutions, notably for customers who have an average budget and who aren't able to spend large sums of money for a house. We've managed to make simple constructions, but which are nonetheless attractive. I think that's the secret of Vorarlberg architecture.
Born into a family of carpenters, Herman Kaufmann belongs to this generation of Baukünstler, these architects who, at the beginning of the 1980s, redesigned wood construction in order to promote its ecological and cost-effective potential. How do you explain the special place that contemporary architecture has in Vorarlberg?
This movement started in the 1960s. It's due to a few young architects who finished their studies and started to rediscover this region, the roots of this region, and to reinterpret its construction tradition.
For all these architects, was it a question of combining contemporary aesthetics with local roots?
Exactly. That was the key and basic idea of this movement. They said to themselves, we have to return to simplicity. We have to go back to the roots. At that time, these architects weren't very well regarded by society because, in fact, they were doing the exact opposite of what was considered modern at the time. And then there's also the fact that the municipalities and local governments began to find this architecture interesting for them and started to promote it.
When we look at the different buildings here, we can see that your approach as an architect also included the reappropriation of this local resource, wood.
For us, wood was a bridge with the old-style architecture. For us, the idea has always been to construct with wood, to construct with this traditional material, but in a way that totally meets modern demands.
In the family sawmill, Erman and his brother have developed a prefabrication system for eco-sustainable homes. Using a natural material that's both local and renewable, transformed and assembled on site enables them to considerably reduce construction and energy costs. But in order to achieve this result, they need to work in total synergy with all sectors of the wood industry. You've been building wooden buildings all your life. So what exactly does this material represent for you? Is it a tool, a faithful companion, a love story?
For me, wood is the most complete construction material. And it's also extremely beautiful. It's a material that we've learned to use for generations, and that we've loved for generations. Where do you go on holiday? You go to a chalet somewhere in the mountains. You go inside, and you immediately feel good in these wooden surroundings. That's what wood is for me.
At the end of my visit, Voralberg seems exemplary to me in terms of ecological architecture and sustainable development. While it can serve as a source of inspiration to others, it would be wrong to consider it as a complete and exportable model. Voralberg is above all a local answer, the product of a conservative use of natural resources and a general mobilization of all its inhabitants. An ecosystem where the natural, economic, political, and social dimensions are inseparable.